Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Outcomes Rocket. Saul Marquez here, and today I have the privilege of hosting an extraordinary leader in healthcare. His name is Glenn Davis. He is the global manager of smart health at Niterra Ventures. He's a global healthcare executive leading a team focused on new business creation in digital health in Japan, Europe, and Silicon Valley at Niterra Ventures based in California. Together with Niterra Ventures Labs, they're expanding their portfolio globally through strategic investments and partnerships focused on healthcare and innovation. Glenn, thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Well, so thank you for the very kind introduction. I feel, yeah, thank you very much. No, it's a pleasure to, I think, be on the podcast and speaking to your audience.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and look, you just have so much to share, and the work that you guys are doing is very impressive, and we'll get to that. Before we do, though, I'd love to just kind of get an understanding of what inspires your work in healthcare.
I think throughout my career, I've always had a very strong passion for technology, and I think having five daughters, that's also sort of promoted me to think about, how can that be applied to healthcare? And how do we improve patient lives? That's been a significant driver. And I grew up in Australia, so I do have an accent. And I think I did postgraduate studies in medical ultrasound. I worked clinically both in the Australian sort of public healthcare system and also the private. And I think those experiences of being like in intensive care, in the emergency room on weekdays, and then, at 3 o'clock in the morning. I think some of those experiences and working in clinics, because I was working in whether it be obstetrics or vascular or radiology, I think it really gave me an excellent insight into, not only the patient journey, because I think we've all been a patient at some point, or your family, but I think also how clinicians are dealing with those sort of challenges and life in a hospital. So I think that's provided an excellent grounding to which I sort of brought into the industry, and really understood, okay, how do we actually do things that make a difference?
That's really great, Glenn. And I love that sort of multi-country experience. In the social system and in a more capitalist system that we have here in the states. Um, and that sort of experience really, I think, offers value to the work you guys are doing. So, talk to us about Niterra Ventures. What are you guys up to, and how are you adding value to the healthcare ecosystem?
Yeah, I think I suppose I brought with me this real focus of how do we make sure we're centered on the patient, and really a focus of how can we help people spend more time living, less worried about their health, or bringing things to the market that assures that we have the right ideal, that we're focused on the right things. So we at Niterra Ventures, we've been chartered in creating new revenue streams. And that really outlines the translation of Niterra as a company aligned with its sort of long-term management plan of how do we increase the ratio of business that's not associated with automotive or, the internal combustion engine, which has historically been our focus. So an example of this is we had recently invested in a small company actually startup based in Los Gatos, and they're focused on telemedicine and personalized care management. Last year, we also invested in cold plasma, a company called Neoplas GmbH. And that's the technology focused on advanced wound care. In addition, we've also been looking at respiratory care as well. So I think from our point of view, I came to Niterra. It was a very natural fit for my global experience. And we're certainly focused on looking at small startups as well as partnerships. And I think that gives us this edge in trying to think, how do we bring innovations to the market, both internally and externally?
It's really fascinating, this seed of health that was planted into sort of a traditionally automotive company. Can you share a little bit more about the inspiration for that specific focus?
We're very fortunate. I think the leadership within Niterra thinks very long term. So we're an 80-year-old company. So we've had, initial focus in ceramics, materials science, and that's been spread amongst automotive. But we also have, significant healthcare business around oxygen concentration, as well as pulmonary diagnostics that,
Got it.
globally. So I think it's along that, I think what's interesting with companies is how do you remain really focused on how do you help people? Because in the end of the day, that's what a company's about. We have
Mm.
employees, you've got the duty of care, and then you've also got how do you, make a difference to society as a whole. So for us, we have very much a focus on certainly mobility, healthcare, and energy. And I think that's a hot topic to be in all three at the moment. So I think it's having a leadership that thinks beyond a quarter, frankly. And I think that's what's certainly attracted me in the roles that we have today.
Definitely clear differentiators in the type of company that you guys are in the market. When you think about some of the, we learn more about these setbacks that we have in our lives than the wins sometimes. If you could think to one that sticks out to you and a learning that you got out of that, what would you say it was?
Here in Silicon Valley, and I've lived in the Valley now. I originally came from Japan. So I've lived in 5 different countries. So Australia, then I was based out of London in Europe. Then I found myself in Singapore, looking
Wow.
after Asia, and then Tokyo. So I lived in Japan for 3 years, and then sort of East Coast, West Coast.
Hmm.
I think what's interesting, here in Silicon Valley, I think there's no doubt we have a culture of innovation and failing fast. But that's really unique. And I don't think it necessarily translates to other cultures when you think of it outside of this bubble of innovation and VC culture we have here. So, I mean, in my career, I think I feel like I've seen it all from regulatory setbacks where, suddenly you're on the wrong pathway of a regulatory approval, whether that be in Europe or China or Korea or the US. I think I've seen so many product issues, I think, in different ways. And of course, the big thing here in Silicon Valley in a startup is when funding dries up and then all of a sudden, you're thinking where to go. But um, I think the biggest learning for me is never be daunted by it as a leader. Um, Perseverance is key. You've got to have that vision and almost like un and no doubt that you and your team can achieve that. So I don't mean you can't be blindsided by
Sure, sure.
competition, but I will tell you something. I'm very much a fan of the Nepalese climber. His name's Nimsda, and I don't know if any of your
Okay.
audience have actually seen the movie or read the book. It's called 14 Peaks, but I
I
would
haven't seen it.
encourage you. It's like a phenomenal story of in one season, climbing season, him and a Nepalese team climbed 14 peaks over 8,000 meters, which was
Holy
never been done.
smokes.
But his story, I think, is a great one of perseverance and driving a team, and how that journey of how you are seeing setbacks, how do you overcome them? So I encourage anyone to read that book.
I just got goosebumps thinking about it, Glenn. It sounds
Yeah,
like
it's
a
pretty wild.
great
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a great book. And I was looking it up as you were sharing that, and it looks like it's also a documentary
Correct. Yeah, yeah. The film is
on
wild.
Netflix. Ah,
I actually made all my global team sit down and watch it.
oh, you
But
did?
yeah, yeah. As a leader, I think we have to inspire that. I mean, building trust is really, really critical, I think. But the other one is you have to lead by example and inspire people that you have to have that vision and also be able to execute. But you've got to inspire people to understand that vision and where you're trying to head.
This idea of inspiration, folks. I mean, Glenn did it so easily. And I'm about to watch this movie when I'm going to Mexico here in a couple days, and I'm gonna download that and I'm gonna watch it. And it's how you say it, it's what you say, and it's believing it. And Glenn, you definitely embody the belief of what's possible. And so thank you for that, and thank you for sharing some of those setbacks. What would you say? You see a lot of companies, you and your team. And so, what would you say is a trend or technology that's going to change healthcare as we know it?
If I think about when I first worked in a hospital, it was all about the hospital, and but I think it's under significant transformation. So I think we're seeing a shift from the traditional hospital-based healthcare model to more services being delivered at home. There's no doubt. COVID had accelerated it beyond belief. And I think it's also driven by aging population. I mean, here in the US, if you look at it, baby boomers are going to be a significant economic driver um, in the way that as they won't accept queuing up in a hospital ER for 4 to 6 hours. They're going to say, well, can't there be a better model than that, as an example? I mean, if you're lucky, if you go outside North America, you can be in, I won't name some of the countries, you could be stuck in ER for, several days,
Oh,
in the corridors.
oh
Um,
boy.
and so I don't think that's going to be accepted by an aging population. They will want something better. So I think that demand, I think you're going to see more tech-enabled services that benefit both physicians and patients. And I think it was very interesting. I think it was yesterday or earlier in the week, Amazon Prime announced a telemedicine service being offered to their Prime members through One Medical
I saw
for
that. I didn't know
a
what that
fixed
was.
a fixed rate and unlimited, access. So I think we're going to see, it's quite significant changes
Hmm.
to offer better care and accessibility of care.
Hmm.
And it's going to change because let's face it, we can't go on the way we're doing now. Our health expenditure in the US is, you know, um, you know, an amazing. It's the highest in the world as far as the percentage GDP goes. So I think that's going to be a trend without a doubt. It's people demand more, and I think we've got as a technology and an industry, we need to figure out how to focus on that.
I was ordering something on Amazon yesterday and I saw that, and I didn't actually dig into it, but that's what it is, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I mean, very interesting. I think um, the game's changed, and I think
It has.
it will be an interesting scenario for hospitals how they adopt to this change too.
Did an interview a couple weeks ago, Glenn, and sort of to the topic of what you're saying, or is the guest with me said it's not about going where the puck is going now. It's about redirecting the puck. And so we have to do that. If we don't do it, we will get disrupted. To Glenn's point, we have to be aware. You can't have your blinders on, and you got to do things that are data backed. And the way that you do that is you pay attention. So love that, Glenn. Thank you. Look, I've really enjoyed our time together. This has been a lot of fun. If you wanted to leave our listeners with a closing thought, what would you leave them with? And then what's the best place they could get in touch with you and the team?
I feel if you're in medical device and healthcare, I find the startup ecosystem incredibly exciting. Um, and I think it's also very easy to get distracted or focused on the technology, but lose sight of the patient. So I was with a close friend of mine last week, the other day, and I think he reminded me of something that it was if the value proposition or the story behind what you're talking about, it needs to be compelling enough that you'd go home after hearing it and you'd tell either your husband, your wife, your partner. It has to be so impactful that you would go home and tell someone about that. And I
Mm,
thought that was really interesting because um, the stories and how we articulate,
yeah.
uh, um, you're not going to go home and say, I found this really fantastic, technology and, it's a 6% improvement over an existing device. That's really not something you usually come home and tell your significant other about. But if you tell them, look, this was, impactful enough that instead of someone having their limb amputated, they were able to, their wound was able to be actually closed. That meant now they could actually take their kids to school and walk down the shop and be independent. That's the difference, I think. So a compelling, strong value proposition that's impactful, I think, makes the difference.
Such a smooth way of saying it. And
But
eh,
like at the end of the day, people buy from people,
yeah,
and we have to, we have to remind ourselves that, that's the difference. Where as you and your audience, you connect.
mm.
That connection is critical. That that makes the difference. So that's my hopefully that may resonate with your audience.
Oh, that's beautiful. No, I love it. Folks, take that home with you. If you're in the device space, or you're in the healthcare SaaS space, or even if you're a provider, are you providing experiences that have people go talk about you? Like, that is just like the bridge between a disconnected healthcare industry to a connected consumer focused industry. I think that's the culmination of it. So let's listen to Glenn here, folks. Take that home with you and do something about it. Because at the end of the day, on the Outcomes Rocket, you make things happen by taking action. And Glenn, I want to thank you for taking action today and being with us. Really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And certainly, you can contact us through our sort of website or LinkedIn. But we're always, we do have 3 offices. We have one in Berlin, we have one in Tokyo. We're headquartered in Nagoya, and our global group is out of Santa Clara. So we always have events from time to time. We'd love to see you and your listeners, if you to come down and talk to us and tell us about what your particular innovation or how you can make a difference. We're always trying to listen. So
Amazing, Glenn. Folks, we will leave in the show notes links to the LinkedIn and the webpage that Glenn has referenced. So make sure you check out the show notes. If you have an innovation that you're wanting to get in front of this amazing team, there's big opportunities here. So, Glenn, thank you so much for being with us today.
my pleasure. Thanks, everyone.